Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you, and let's get right on into it. All right, we're going to pull up the screen here, but first, let me get my Hmbl hat on. That way I'm in humble mindset. So let's get right on into it. All right, Hmbl has added blocks to their mobile wallet, so you'll be able to purchase blocks through it and send it also. We're going to talk about that. Then Forwardly has bought $250,000 worth of blocks. We're going to discuss that a little bit. We're going to cover a dilution and see where we're at with that, and then go over the chart. All right, first we got to talk about this market. This has been one of the most difficult markets. It's been awful for months, and the last week or two has been very difficult. As many of you know, Meet Kevin, of course, sold out completely out of all of his stocks, and that caused Monday's crash, in my opinion, or at least played a role in that. But now we've got interest rate issues and all that. Pretty much the market sucks.
That's right, it sucks. Only reason I'm here is maybe I'll buy it.
That's right. I said it. It sucks. But it also is going to give us some opportunities for some great stocks over time. And let's discuss what's going on in the market. And then, like I say, we'll get into Hmbl. The big issue right now is Chairman Powell has come out and he's made it clear that interest rates almost certainly are going to be going up in March. And of course, they never tell you exactly what they're going to do, but they either talk hawkishly or dovishly. So he obviously is more hawkish and talking about interest rates. So that's going up in order to help do something about inflation, which is well above 7%. I do not agree with that number. I think that's a joke. I think it's about 12%. If you've been to the grocery store, you know exactly what I'm talking about, or anywhere else. I was trying to buy cold cuts today, some turkey and some roast beef, and the prices are unbelievable from what they used to be. But anyway, I digress. Also, we've got the Rona out there, and it's been nothing but a pain, and this newest version has just been exactly that. But hopefully over the next month or so, it'll get out of here, and we can get back to some sort of a normal life. I don't know, it's been years now. But the problem with inflation and why it's such a big deal, it hurts so many things. It decreases the value of money in the future, of course. But when you're talking about a Hmbl or certainly an OTC stock, inflation's really hard on it because they're not making any money. And they're not going to make money for a couple of years at least, in my opinion. And for them to make money at that point is going to be worth less, and their earnings are going to be worth less. So it really hits the OTC. And pretty much just imagine that OTC stocks are the scarecrow, and inflation's kind of like fire.
How about a little fire, scarecrow?
That's right. It's kind of like that. But like I say, hopefully it'll calm down over time and become less of a problem. We'll see about that. It's hard to say. All right, so the first big thing, Hmbl has added blocks onto their mobile wallet, which to me, that just speaks of progress as much as anything. Now, of course, Blocks is in partnership with Hmbl, and understand that Brian Foote is heavily involved with Blocks. So I think that's a real good move, and it was expected. And of course, it talks about how Humbl's been added to the Pay mobile wallet, and Blocks, which is on the Ethereum network. And I would assume they're going to want to use Blocks over time for all kinds of things with Hmbl Pay, but they're just getting started with that. And Blocks is actually just getting started. If you'll remember, it actually became available to the public just, gosh, I think it was a month or two ago. So Blocks, I think, has a real good future, or certainly has a possibility of that. I mean, you never know. But I think that's a good move for Hmbl Pay, no question. And also right here, you can see where Forwardly announced that it had purchased $250,000 in Blocks tokens directly from Blocks. And it says Forwardly paid the quoted market price at the time of the purchase using cash the company had on hand. It said George Sharp stated, "We believe the blockchain is the future of everything, and together with its investment in Hmbl, this acquisition of Blocks gives Forwardly a foothold in that future. It's Forwardly's intention to hold this asset long term." So I think that's pretty interesting. Now, as you can see, Hmbl is sitting at around 25 cents, just under it. And we've discussed how 22 cents appears to be the bottom. We'll see over time. That's my opinion. And the reason being for that has to do a lot with the warrant shares and the dilution that we've seen. And it hasn't been as bad as everybody was screaming. And part of that is because Brian Foote got in front of it finally and started restricting a lot of those B shares. And of course, he immediately, back months ago, said that he was going to hold his for 2 years. But before we got to December 3rd, he got with the angel investors and said, look, we need to restrict these some. Otherwise, come December 3rd, we're going to have a problem. And so they agreed to, I believe it's 5% the first 3 months, then it drops to 3% that the B shares can sell as far as angel investors, and the insiders have not sold any, according to Brian Foote, and they can only sell like 1% a quarter. And as you can see here, we're sitting at outstanding shares of 1.18 billion, and we were at 1.103 billion January 13th, so now on the 25th, so about 15 million shares have been sold over the last 12 days or 2 weeks, basically. So that's not a lot of dilution. You're talking about a million shares a day out of a billion that have been sitting there. So, you know, very little dilutions happened, but we are getting close to the 250 million shares they were planning on selling. And let's take a look at that. And here's where they put out their S1, and the biggest part of the 250 million shares is the 123 million, and I believe that's forwardly, and they cannot make any money on these shares unless they're above 20 cents. So we've discussed that in the past, how I don't see any way they sell any of these shares unless it's at least 21, 22 cents, and I don't see them selling at that either. So like I said, I think we've got a bottom based on that. I don't see the biggest part of these shares getting sold anything less than that, and I doubt any of the B shares are going to want to sell below that either, because they see this as well. And so out of the 255 million shares that they had announced would be sold, and it looks like about 206 million of those have actually been sold, so we're over 80% at this point. So we're getting pretty close to this being done. And the goal, of course, was to raise $39 million for the company. And realize Hmbl gets, of those warrant shares, they get 20 cents of that. So if it's sold for like 25 or 30 cents, they're going to get like 80% of that, and that's going to go into their balance sheet. And Hmbl needs that money, and it's going to be quite a bit. You're talking about almost $25 million if all those are sold. So that's going to help Hmbl over time, and it'll allow them to cash flow their business and build it over time. So again, the dilution that everybody was concerned about coming December 3rd and all of that has been very limited. Not nearly as bad as we had heard from Mr. Gold Panda. So I feel quite a bit more comfortable, especially at the price that we're at. So again, you know, around 22 cents seems like a pretty good place, and that's where I'll be adding. I did let it go all the way down there just to be confident of it, to where I could feel a little bit better. Could it go below this? Yes, of course it could. You know, in this environment, anything can happen, especially in the OTC. But I feel pretty good about 22 cents being the bottom for this. And at some point, I see this thing going back up over time as Hmbl builds its business and executes. Now, granted, they have to execute. If they don't, it's not going to matter. But I feel pretty good about this team being able to take this stock to the next level over time, and it's going to take time. So if you're holding this stock and you think it's going to skyrocket like it did in 2021, I wouldn't look for that. I would look for this thing to steadily build over time as they execute. All right, folks, and that's Hmbl today. Just wanted to go over those two news items, the blocks on the mobile app, and then, of course, forwardly. And I always cover the dilution just to keep you abreast of that. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover Hmbl. And if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Give the channel a chance. I'd certainly appreciate it. And I hope you did like the content. And we'll see you next time on Mr. Frugal Investor.